Welcome to our flute choir, our Emerson flute choir. Aren't they wonderful for being here today? Short notice. It's so fun to hear so many flutes. I'd like to thank Mary, who's our worship associate today. You also sort of organized the flute choir in a way, and you arranged the flute choir. But I want to tell you something else she does that you don't know. And I don't like to single out volunteers, but Mary comes here many times during the week to sit outside to sit in that room out there so that other people, so that we can rent this room for concerts and things like this during the week. Tuesday music, Wednesday guitar. You do a lot. And that's the kind of thing that I know that a lot of people see what you do, but people do not see that because they don't come to Wednesday music and Tuesday or whatever it is. But just thank you very much for enabling us to be able to rent our beautiful space. Uh, thank you. So I have two important announcements I need to make this morning, which is why I had them play first, so that I know you that they'll all be sitting there and paying attention to me while I made the announcements, which is not always the case. So next week is GA, UUA's General Assembly. We are doing three special things next week. First, and there's a flyer out there, and it's been very public in your newsletter, in your e-blast, right? Yes, okay. First, on Friday, the opening GA worship service is at First Church. So we're having the service there. If you're interested on Friday night, you can come over to First Church. If you want to make little things out of it and go out for dinner after or whatever, that would be wonderful. So that's at First Church on Friday. On Saturday, anybody who's registered for GA, wink, wink, nod, nod, it can come here, and we are going to do the breakout sessions here. So all 7 UU churches have been invited to come here on Saturday and do the breakout sessions together. So if you've ever wanted to go to GA, without the boring governance parts, that's being done earlier in the week. The ballot amendments and all of that stuff, the resolution to vote on whether we're voting or not, all that stuff, that's earlier in the week. So that'll be gone. This is just the educational stuff. That is on Saturday here. Check the schedule. And then on Sunday, if you come to church here, no one will be here because we have invited all those other churches to come here on Saturday for the GA sessions. They have invited us to worship with them on Sunday. So the two churches that are holding the GA service on Sunday are Woodlands and Bay Area in Clear Lake. Am I pointing at least the right way? Generally speaking, right? Yeah. So I'm getting it. So you are invited to go to either Woodlands or Clear Lake, whichever is better for you. You are also invited to not come here because there ain't going to be anybody here because we're all going to be at Woodlands and GA. So I need to make sure that you hear that bit so that everybody that comes on Sunday can't blame me. That's the point of all of that. Okay, second important announcement. We have been contacted by the Houston DSA, which is a group we've been working with more and more, about this ballot petition that I'm sure Ellen has approached you with. This is a ballot. This is a petition to modify the charter of the city of Houston to disallow no-knock warrants. No-knock warrants are on the rise. There were 1,500 no-knock warrants in 1984, and there were 75,000 last year. So these no-knock warrants are, we think, constitutionally invalid and dangerous. This is how people get killed. So we are asking you to sign this petition. We are asking you to consider it, and then if you wish, sign the petition, and you have to do it today. They're due today. So after service today, I'm going to take these over to the petition organizer and get them registered. So if you haven't read this yet, we have the entire petition out there. Ellen has them, and she has the thing for you to sign. So if you haven't done it yet, we would invite you. We want to make sure you have the opportunity to do this if you want to. and it's right outside there. Yes, Beryl. A no-knock warrant is the police do not have to introduce themselves before going into a place. They can just blow down the door. You have to serve the warrant, right? And I'm not a lawyer, but you have to serve the warrant. You have to open the door. Here's the warrant for us to come in, and then you come in. So in the past, the no-knock warrants were used to protect the police officers, right? If they thought that there was weapons in there. But the vast majority of them are looking for marijuana, and marijuana has become an excuse to arrest people. And then they end up in the ICE system and so on and so forth. So that's what this is all about, right? Okay. Yes. Probably, right. Right. They're using the marijuana as an excuse to look into people who they probably have no other reason to look into, basically, is it. So that is out there for you, and the urgency around that is we need to do it today because I don't know why, but they said we need to do it today. Okay? Thank you very much. And now I invite Mary to bring us in to the formal part of our service.
Now we transition into our sacred time together, a time of reverence, a time of attention, a time of intention. I invite you to join us in this time marked by the lighting of our chalice flame. I would like to invite Mike Condit to come forward and light our chalice flame in the sanctuary. And I invite those of you at home to light a candle where you are to join in spirit. We mark this time with words, important words that bring us into a time of collective intention. This week, our words come from Rania Abdullah. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Rania al-Hassan, now known by her original name, Rania Abdullah, is the current Queen of Jordan.
Thank you, Mike.
As the wife of King Abdullah II. She is an author, advocating domestically and globally for cross-cultural dialogue. Please join me in reading these words together as they appear on the screen. We are stronger when we listen and smarter when we share. Emerson is a beloved community of faith, reason, and affection. We welcome all to grow in mind and spirit as we build a better world. We do this by gathering to seek, learn, and grow, and in the course of our work, to promote love amongst each other, our congregation, and the wider community here in Houston. Whether you're here in the sanctuary or joining us on Zoom or Facebook, we welcome you. No matter where you are on your personal spiritual journey, we invite you to live, learn, love, and grow with us. As a covenantal community, we aspire to promote love, fellowship, and social justice, as well as support for your personal growth. Please join me in our welcoming, as on the screen. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you find yourself on your life's journey, whichever your pronouns, whether you've walked in or rolled in or dialed in, whomever you love, you are welcome here. And now, this week in Unitarian Universalist history with Richard Cummins.
Thank you, Mary. Good morning. Good morning. This morning, 2 items from Frank Schulman's book, wonderful book of 600 years of UU history. On June the 10th in 1565, the Socinian Church, properly called the Minor Reformed Church of Poland, was formed. Socinianism, named after Faustus Socinus, was a strong movement in Poland in the 16th and 17th centuries and had a great influence on Unitarianism in England and Transylvania. The Socinians were noted for their rigid moral standards. Their goal was to hold on to the ways of primitive Christianity. Socinians believed in non-resistance, would not take part in war, and would not hold serfs. And on the 11th, in 1814, Henry Whitney Bellows was born in Boston. He entered Harvard College at age 14 and later went on to the Harvard Divinity School. He was minister of the First Unitarian Church in New York, which he helped rename All Souls Church of New York. Bellows preached vigorously on public issues and helped found a Unitarian church in Harlem. During the Civil War, he united Unitarian and other church women to provide medical and social support for Union troops through the U.S. Sanitary Commission. He also raised $5 million for its support. After the war, he focused his organizational vision on empowerment of Unitarian congregations. Traveling to many states in the late 1860s, Bellows founded a network of state conferences, forerunners of today's districts, which he then organized into the General Conference of Unitarian and Other Christian Churches, meeting annually in May. Until the mid-1900s, Confederate conferences that served congregations were separate from the American Unitarian Association, which was founded to serve individuals and ministers. Bellows died on January 31st, 1882. Reverend Ed?
Thank you, Richard. You may have noticed that I took my coat off. That's because it's hot in here. Please feel free to take your coats off. It's hot. There's there's 4 air conditioners in this building, 2 in this room. Only 1 is working. So we're working on it, but it ain't going to get any better today. So I see this. This is a good idea. Yes. But feel free to take your jackets off. It is important that we acknowledge that our history here in Texas and in these United States is a shared and at times harmful history. Our congregation's buildings are situated on the home of the Karankawa and the Atakapa peoples who, for at least 2,000 years before European settlers arrived here, lived and settled. And those European settlers nearly brought about their end. And may we recognize, uplift, and support Indigenous voices and communities in our work as a congregation. Today, we are remembering a tragic event that happened 35 years ago here in Houston in 1991. A young man was beaten by some high school students while walking to his car in the Montrose area, and that man's name was Paul Broussard. I learned of the Paul Broussard murder shortly after I arrived here some 3 years ago, and I immediately put it on the schedule for a worship service today. Each week we stand here and we remember the harm done to the Atakapa and the Karankawa. We remember that we stand here in part because they don't. It's important to remember these things. We should do a better job of remembering, because when we forget, we allow tragedies to be repeated by new groups of perpetrators on new victims. Let us remember today, but not celebrate, but remember the murder of Paul Broussard. Let us remember how hard the LGB community had to fight to stop abuse like neglect. It was in the case of Paul Broussard, but how also overt abuse was also the case. Mayoral candidate and former 2-term mayor at the time running for election, Lewis Welch, was asked how to fix the gay problem, and he said, "Shoot all the queers." Unfortunately, it took Paul Broussard dying for something to be done about it. Today, as we remember Paul Broussard, who, were he still alive today, would be just 2 years older than me, and we remember the wrongs affected upon the LGBTQ community. Now, you may have noticed that each time I used the term LGB, I left off the T. You may be wondering why that is. Well, that is because every inch of the fight fought by the L and the G and the B community that lies behind them, plus every inch of the fight that the L and the G and the B community still lies in front of them, every inch of that was fought, every inch that was won, and every inch that is still withheld from those communities still lies in front of the T community. For many of us, the fight is still very real, so I'm very cautious to talk about the trans community in the same breath as the L and the G and the B communities and all the other colors on that rainbow. Not to exclude them from today's memory, but to explicitly remind us that the fight for human rights for every member of the LGBT++ community is ongoing. But it is ongoing and red hot for the transsexual community. So I invite you now to hear these words, these opening words that we have. Both of the readings today are from videos. The first one, and we're not going to play the video, we're going to read we learned our lesson last week. Actually, these videos are sort of older. The first one is a quote from local Houston television program, Good Morning Houston. It aired on Monday, July 15th, 1991. Speaking in this segment is Ray Hill. Oh, has anybody heard the name Ray Hill? Oh, good. Okay. Ray Hill was a longtime Houston LGBT+ rights activist. I was sorry to learn after watching this video of him be interviewed on. I watched a lot of video of Ray Hill. He managed to get himself out there quite a bit. Well, Ray died at 2 days after Thanksgiving in 2018 at the age of 78. Otherwise, I would have invited him here today. At the time of this interview, though, he was 50 years old, and here are his words for your reflection this morning. He says, "There isn't much difference in my mind between gay bashing or violent crime against gay and lesbian people and violent crime against any other class of people where there is prejudice. My Arab friends," it's amazing how things don't change, "my Arab friends are having an especially difficult time right now because of the emotion around the Iraq War, which doesn't have anything to do with Arab Americans. Prejudice against Vietnamese spilled over a few years ago with the Ku Klux Klan. Prejudice against Hispanic and Black Americans can result in crimes of violence. Until we address the whole problem of how much intolerance we are willing to tolerate in our world and start addressing prejudice and hate across the board, and our criminal justice system is especially sensitive to that, and they have not paid much attention to those issues as they should, because prejudice in these cases is very difficult to investigate. For instance, the media was the investigation. If the media was the investigation, if someone hadn't come forward to the media, we would not know to this day who killed Paul Broussard. I think we need to get to the root of where the issues of hate crime evolved, as far as the lesbian community and that which the penal code in our system. The Texas Penal Code discriminates against lesbians and gay men. In essence, it is saying that it is okay to discriminate against them, and until we get to the root of this, things are not going to change." That is the end of the words of Ray Hill. And now I invite you, with our chalices lit, our hearts and our minds centered in this moment, I invite you to join in singing our first hymn. Our first hymn is Shall We Gather at the River, which is in the Teal Hymnal, hymn number 1046, but the words will also be on the screen. And are the flutes going to play for this? The flutes are going to play for this. Wonderful.
Each time we gather, we ask for your help in fulfilling this church's mission. The success of this church and of the principles we support is made possible by the work of our members and friends and by your financial support. We honor that support by striving to live the mission of this place fully and wholeheartedly. Here at Emerson, this Sunday collection does not go to funding our work, which is funded through our pledges. This collection each week goes to fund the work of important partners of Emerson who, in our opinion, live out our Unitarian Universalist values in the community and in the world beyond our community. The act of giving of our financial support is both a transformative spiritual act and one way we live our values. 75% of today's offering will go to our June Share the Plate recipient, the Women's Home. The mission of the Women's Home is to build communities that strengthen women and support families as they reclaim their stability. Guided by their signature whole life model, they provide care that is comprehensive, evidence-based, and compassionate. Their approach meets women and their families where they are, empowering them to reclaim their lives and become strong, contributing members of their communities. The remaining 25% of today's offering will go to Interfaith Ministries Meals on Wheels, which provides thousands of meals every day to Houston's homebound seniors. You can go to our webpage for online giving, put cash or a check in the offering basket, or mail a check to the church.
Today, folks, we are celebrating one of our own who is also celebrating a very important rite of passage. Today, we celebrate with Lacey Lopez because Lacey has been graduated from high school. Woo! Where did Lacey run off to? Oh, he's over there. Okay, there you go. Lacey is our only high school graduate this year. Lacey has been attending Emerson for only a year or two, right around that? Yeah. With their mom, Dana Hildy, and Lacey will be moving to California with their father. Lacey was born in 2008 and was graduated from Katy High School and also completed 1-year program at digital audio at the Middle Center Career and Technology Center, which sounds very centered. After high school, they will be aiming toward a future in music composition, and we have people in these seats who have degrees in music composition, at least one, right? Anybody music composition? And listen to this, music production entrepreneurship, and those classes will be held at Saddleback Community College. Saddleback Community College is in California, and Lacey will be moving away to go to those programs. So we wish Lacey luck in their future endeavors. Please stop by the gathering place during coffee hour and grab a piece of cake and wish Lacey well and hear about their exciting programs. So thank you. Woo. We were talking earlier, and Lacey said to me, you know, graduating from high school, it was always something that was going to happen way in the future. Now it's in the past. No, I don't know. Right, yeah, that's part of the fun. Wait till you get married, and if you do get married, all these changes that happen, you think they're never going to happen, then they happen. And that's how they go. I would now like to invite Mary Cochran to bring our second reading.
Our second reading this morning is a quote from Houston Public Media television program, A Murder in Montrose, the Paul Broussard Legacy. The program, which was a documentary of the Paul Broussard murder and its aftermath here in Houston, was produced and aired on the 25th anniversary of Mr. Broussard's murder. This clip combines quotes from two of the many people who were interviewed on the program. The first is Anise Parker, the first openly gay mayor of a major United States city. She was a 3-term mayor, serving from 2010 to 2016. The second is Jack Valinsky, who was the community liaison from the mayor's Citizens Assistance Office until his retirement in 2024. The quotes interweave, so we've left out the delineation of who is speaking at what time because it detracts from the power of the quote. Now, there have been times in the past where the GLBT community in Houston has taken to the streets. When Anita Bryan came to town in her anti-gay crusade, we took to the streets of Houston, but all the communities of Houston are generally peaceful, and protests are usually peaceful as well. You know, Houston wasn't really known as a protest city. Part of it was the heat. Part of it was that we were spread out. Part of it was that Houston was more or less built on people coming here to get jobs, not moving here because they wanted to move here for any other reason. So a lot of us really didn't know each other, and getting people active was very difficult at that time. But the reaction to Paul Broussard's murder was unlike what I had experienced before, because when we marched against Anita Bryan, we were angry. We were making a statement, but it was almost joyful. We were standing up for ourselves. But when Paul Broussard was murdered, we were angry and frustrated and demanding action. I think it really shook up the community. Queer Nation and the ACT UP group started to form in Houston, which was much later than the other cities, and started becoming involved. To see people actually protest about this and some of the other issues of inequality here in Houston was overdue.
Invite you now to come back with me. Come back with me. It's July 4th, 1991, 35 years ago. July 4th was a Thursday. Come back with me now specifically to 3 a.m. It was 78 degrees outside, but I'm sure it felt like 110. Paul Broussard was a 27-year-old A&M graduate working at what would become Nations Bank. He was leaving a club with 3 of his friends. It's safe to assume that they had been drinking. It was 3 a.m. on Independence Day. On the way back to their car, they encountered 10 high school students from the Woodlands who had been cruising around down at Montrose. Why, you may ask? They chased Paul and his 3 friends, and Paul was the only one of the 3 that got caught. They were armed with 2x4s that were, quote, studded with nails. One of them had a pocket knife. The whole incident only took a few minutes, and they were gone. I assume they were quite proud of their accomplishment. Paul was left stabbed twice and barely and badly beaten. The emergency medical services came. It took them 45 minutes to get Paul to Ben Taub Hospital, 9 minutes away. They were afraid to touch him. He was male. This was Montrose. It was 3 a.m., and it was 1991. Paul Broussard, a 27-year-old A&M graduate, was dead by noontime. The coroner's report listed the beating as the cause of death, plus a significant delay in medical care. Those are the facts of the story. So you may be wondering, why do I care? July 4th is in just a couple weeks, and this was 35 years ago, this anniversary. And I'm remembering the Stonewall Revolution, which was 22 years and 8 days before that. Paul was just 5 years old at the time of the Stonewall Revolution. Times were changing in America, but less so in Houston. Houston's Stonewall event was the murder of Paul Broussard, and many of us don't remember. Remembering our past is important, the good and the bad. The good that became the bad, and the bad that became the good. When I think of remembering, I think of this book. Researching the Paul Broussard incident, that's an awful thing to say, made me think of this book. This book is an oral history of the Greenville Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, my home congregation. It's an interesting project. What they did was the same person, and I'll fan through here, and I know so many of the names, so many wonderful people, but the same person interviewed all these people and asked them basically the same questions. It was an important thing that I was asked to do history projects on my congregation while I was going through seminary, and I see lots of wonderful names. You don't know these people, but these are wonderful people. They're as nice as you are, some of them. A lot of them are gone. Some of them are still there. And the thing that jumped out to me, there were lots of things that jumped out to me, but one of the things that jumped out to me was in the history of the Greenville Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, which I'm suspecting is not all that different from yours, there were two really big controversies that occurred that I was actually quite surprised to hear about them having occurred. The first one was the church almost tore itself apart when they hired a gay minister. Is it hard to believe a Unitarian church going into self-destruct mode because you hired a gay minister? This was 1984, and lots of the people who were opposed to this minister left the church at that time. It was a great schism in the process of this church. And about the same time, there was the coming to a head of the great growth controversy. I don't know if you ever went through that, but many Unitarian Universalist churches did go through that. The minister's name was Pete Tollison. Pete just died a few years ago. And Pete was, quote, allowed to resign. That's how they resolved the conflict in 1984. Much to the chagrin of many people, but they allowed Pete to resign in defense of the church. As part of the great growth controversy, Pete is quoted by one of the members in here as asking a question. And it's a wonderful question. It's a question that I thought of when I was looking at Paul Broussard. The question Pete asked was, okay, if we're not going to grow, who are we going to exclude? Reminds me of that quote from Ray Hill that we heard Mary read just a few minutes ago. How much intolerance are we willing to tolerate? What is an acceptable level of intolerance? And if you mash those two questions together, just how much intolerance of who? Who is it okay to not tolerate? When we ask how much intolerance of whom, we are essentially asking, from whom is it acceptable that I withhold my love? And I think the answer to that question is a very, very, very small group of people. If we are all, in fact, born with inherent worth and dignity, whether you believe God granted us that inherent worth and dignity or not, then who am I to decide whose dignity I recognize and whose I don't? So this line of questioning is a good start, but I think the real problem goes further than this. I think the real question is you have to flip that question on its head. Does anyone deserve intolerance, especially intolerance because of who they are or the conditions of their birth? The great Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., said that he had a dream that his 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they are not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I would add, not by the content, not by the color of their skin, not by where they were born, not by how much money they have, not by where they live, not by who they love, but rather how they live their one precious life. I want you to do a thought experiment with me now. Imagine that we've got a column of people right here. Down at the bottom of this column we're going to throw at the bottom of this column the people who are in Dante's 9th ring of hell, the traitors and the murderers. I'm sure you have your own personal favorites for who should be down here in the bottom of this column. And then we're going to go up the column, and right about here we have the regular people who live lives. Dante says people who failed to choose, which is an interesting way of looking at that, right? And then way up here you have the saints, the people who we all, or most of us, think are saints, Saint Teresa, and all these other people up here, right? The untouchables, untouchably good. So you've got this column of people. Now I'm going to ask you to put a line somewhere. Everybody below that line is persona non grata, not welcome. You have revoked their dignity. You've revoked their worth. And everybody north of it, their worth is still intact. So now you get to draw this line. Where do you put the line? In other words, quoting Reverend Pete, who do you choose to exclude? And when you put the line, you admit intolerance in some form of some of these people. Maybe the illusion is that we get to draw the line at all. Those 10 high school boys who drove down to Montrose on that July 4th night 35 years ago obviously thought that they had the right. They had the right to cull the herd. They had the right to bring a 2x4 with them, nail-studded, and a knife. And they could rid the world of one person that they judged to be below the line, unworthy of the inherent dignity bestowed upon us all at birth, either by God or by not, or just in general. And they had the right to take God's work into their hands. They obviously thought that they had the right to revoke this one gay man's inherent dignity and to judge him unworthy. And I ask you, where did they get that notion, I wonder? You know, the sad part in all of this, not that any of this isn't sad, but the sort of saddest part about all of this is almost in all that I read, in all the videos that I watched, in everything that I sort of took in on this work. The sad part is that almost nothing I read talked about Paul himself. His murder, his trial, his mistreatment by the medical staff, all the news coverage, all the rallies, all the protests, everything. Very little about Paul himself. Very little beyond the normal post-mortem platitudes that he was, even in his obituary, it said that he was Texas A&M graduate, that he was a banker at NCBC, which was to become Nations Bank, that he was intelligent, active, and goal-oriented and loved by many in Texas, which I believe you can say about just about anybody who's died. You've never read an obituary that said, "Oh, he's such a jerk." That doesn't happen, right? Even in his obituary, there was as many words dedicated to the cause of his death as there were dedicated to him. It's hard to remember Paul himself. We don't have much to go on. Did he like baseball? Did he like movies? What were his favorite kinds of books? Did he like working at that bank? Could he curl his tongue? Could he wiggle his ears? We won't know. We'll never know. It's a shame that Houston took this much pain to finally react. It's a shame that we don't seem to have changed all that much. We've shifted our intolerances from these people over here to these people over here. It's now trans people and Islamic people and the least among us who are the targets of our apparent ire, or I don't even know what it is. Some things have changed, but some things remain stubbornly the same. And I'm afraid that the next big change will probably take another pointless murder to serve as its catalyst. Probably another young person lost to history, another young person who will never know if he could curl his tongue or wiggle his ears. I think that Paul Broussard might like to have had his legacy be that he was the first of the last. And we are left with all we can do is remember. So today we remember what we can of the very hard to remember Paul Broussard. May he slip peacefully into history. And now I invite you to stand and help us sing our second hymn. The words will be on our screen, and the flutes are going to play. So we have arrived at the part of our service where we must extinguish our chalice flame. I invite the great Mike Condit to come forward and extinguish our chalice flame. While he does that, let me let you hear these words. The chalice is now extinguished, but the light lives on in the minds and hearts and souls of each one of you. Carry that flame with you as you leave this place and share it with those you know, with those you love, and most especially with those you have yet to meet. For everyone joining us online today, we are very grateful you're here. If you missed the beginning of the service, there will be no service online next week. But there will be service online at Northwoods or Bay Area. And Northwoods is in it's not called Northwoods. It's called Northwoods, right. Northwoods in the Woodlands, right. Northwoods in the Woodlands, and Bay Area is called, but it's in Clear Lake. Okay, yes, I got it straight. We look forward to seeing you. I forgot to mention one thing. If you like singing hymns and songs and whatever, Bay Area is going to do the sing-along that precedes the service. So if you want to sing with other people, if you like that sort of thing, well, whether you like it or not, head on down to Bay Area and sing some hymns with us before the service. I think Francine and I are going to be going to Bay Area. I don't remember what we decided. There was a good reason for it, but I can't remember what it was. Also, please don't forget, this is important stuff. We ask you to consider this, and Ellen has it here, and there's a table out there. And don't forget there's cake, and say hi or goodbye or whatever it is that you're going to say to Lacey. And I invite now our flute choir. Are we going to do the processional? We are going to do a recessional. Okay. Look who's playing the piano, guys. Did you see who's playing the piano? Did you see who's playing the piano? Woo!
I practiced this real hard, y'all.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere.